Welcome back to Snap Farming. You know we need to buy land. That was the main action step in year 1. Here is some criteria I used to guide me on buying the perfect land that I needed, and maybe to guide you on the perfect land you need. So there is a lot of land everywhere. Some more expensive, some cheap, some good, some bad, depending on what you want to do. What defines land as good depends on what you want to use it for. So what is good for you might not be good for me, and what might be good for me might not be good for you. It's hard to tell. The main thing I had to do in year 1 was buy land. So I quickly put some resources together, and every money I got, I would put it aside, because I could not wait to buy my own land. In my country, there is a lot of land fraud. There is a series of steps that I go through to double check and be sure that I'm okay. 1, I do not buy land that I have not surveyed. But first, I ensured that I visited the actual land location at least twice. The first time was when I went with the broker or the person selling the land to check it out. Then I would talk with the neighbors at a different occasion. If that was okay, I went ahead to meet with the village chairperson and proceed to do a land verification check at the regional office. And if that was fine, I would check the actual title that the person is selling to me to be sure that they have it. When that is done, I'm essentially made up on buying the land. But one final check, I would do a land survey on the paid day, and if that was fine, then I would proceed and purchase the land. The action item before buying land was to define a criteria that would describe the ideal land for my farming ventures. I want to do farming, and therefore land that fulfills criteria for farming is what I needed. So here is the criteria that I used. There is an 8th one which I'll share at the end, but these are the 8 that I used from the very start. So in the first row, there is a list of those 8. And then in the second row, I define what I found ideal for each of those parameters. So at the very center was the size of the land. I thought that I should get land that is good enough for me to start, but land that gives me room to expand. The figure that landed on my heart was at least 1 acre. Now, because of my financial challenges, the cost was an important parameter, and I thought I couldn't afford anything more than 10 million for 1 acre. That was it. And then importantly, the distance from the city center. I wanted to buy land that was not too far, so that it would enable me to travel to the farm, do my farm activities for a few hours, and then be able to travel back to town on the same day. So the distance that was realistic and logical for me to do that was less than 60 kilometers. The road access was important because I will be moving back and forth between the land and the workplace. So then topography. I know there's the beauty of having a house on a hill and having that view from the hill. That's not the crap I need right now. The amount of technicality you need to grow crops or to do farming on hilly terrain is actually much more than I can comprehend as a novice. I'm just starting and I don't need to do complicated things. So I needed flat land. That's it. And then I needed land that is genuine. And in order to get that, had to have a genuine land title, and the survey had to be good. And then I also needed a good neighbors report. I know some of you are thinking, you have a genuine title and then you've checked all these other things and they are okay. Why are you worrying about the neighbors? I need a good neighbors report. You'll understand later why this is very important. So I scored all these 8 parameters, and the ideal total value was 60. Now, in order to make that 60%, I scored land on 4 things, and that was whether it was good, whether it was average, whether it was bad, or if at all that parameter was not assessed. So if it was good, it got a maximum score of 13, and then if it was average, the score halved to about 6, and if it was bad or that parameter wasn't assessed, it got a negative value. If the parameter wasn't assessed, was -6, and then if it was bad, it scored even worse, -13. Now, beginning with the first land that I assessed, the land was far from town, so I scored it bad. And then the cost was favorable, the road access was actually horrible, and regarding the size was fine. Topography was horrible. Now, because I already had 3 things that were horrible, you can see the total score is in negatives. There was no point of requesting for a land title, doing a survey, or talking to the neighbors. So I filled the tracker for each land that I visited, and quickly looking through, let us see what this looks like. Looking at my land selection tracker, it's pretty evident that each land that I visited, none scored 100%. However, initially, one of the things that was consistently good was the size. Besides that, I struggled with all the others. Initially, I struggled with the distance from the city center. When I tried to balance that and move closer to the city, from land 4, you realize I started struggling with the cost because the cost was a bit higher. And this shouldn't be surprising because distance usually does affect cost, and cost in turn does affect distance. But I wasn't about to give up, so I kept trying to balance the two, and you notice that from land 7, I started actually getting land that met the distance criteria and the cost criteria as well as the size, but it compromised the other things because I started compromising the road access and the topography. So at this point, I noticed that I need to prioritize certain things and compromise 1 or 2 things in order for me to buy land. So what I chose as non-negotiables, things I would never compromise for any reason, was 1, the size, and of course the cost, and then the distance from the city center. And I needed genuine land, so I wouldn't compromise the land title, the land survey, and the neighbors. However, perhaps I could tailor the farming to the topography that I get, so I would compromise a little bit the topography, and if the road access was manageable, like it would be improved over time, I could also try and compromise that. So with that in mind, when I visited land 9, I ended up buying it. It had not so good road access and well average topography, and I'll show you both of these in the upcoming videos. You notice that 3 of the 4 pieces of land that I surveyed had a bad land survey, and if I had not done a land survey, I would not have picked these. Guys, one more thing, very important. One thing I didn't know was important while I was getting land was the water source. You thought electricity, water is more important. I'm not talking about piped water. I'm talking about having a nearby stream of water, or a nearby river, or a nearby swamp where you could maybe pump water from. That is an important thing to think about, because rearing animals or growing crops needs water, and our seasons are a mess, especially with this climate change. So I bought land. I was happy. I was excited. If I have ever gotten a heaven-like feeling, that was the moment when I owned land. I felt like I had made it. But now you get to hear the not so nice part of the story.